This is why the non-Ahmadi scholars issue this edict against marrying into other sects. Except for Ahmadis, all the rest of the Muslim sects, as far as their knowledgeable scholars are concerned, not the common man I mean, they know it, and this is their edict, that if any person belonging to their sect marries, if it's a female for instance, even it applies to the males. So this is why I said any person. Any person who marries into a sect other than theirs, his or her marriage would be null and void, the children would be illegitimate children, they will not inherit anything, and this relationship would be a master-mistress relationship and nothing more, a paramour relationship and no more. So, but Ahmadi's edict is very different from this. We believe that Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ took this decision for guarding the interest of Ahmadi ladies, their faith, and for guarding the interest of the children of such ladies. And he knew that mostly the religion is the religion accepted by the children is the religion of their fathers, because they have the upper hand, at least in the Oriental world. So for this and for other considerations, because he knew that many an Ahmadi girl who was previously married to non-Ahmadis without any objection, that also should be kept in mind, was most ill-treated. And he used to receive letters, pitiable letters from such ladies, and he used to learn of such incidents of cruelty and atrocities. Just because they had a different faith, they would not be permitted to participate in Ahmadiyya way of life and so on. So for these considerations, which are also religious considerations, mind you, being the Imam of the time, he issued the order that no Ahmadi girl would marry a non-Ahmadi. Now that would be a sin to reject the admonition of the Imam. In itself it is a sin, no doubt. But it is not the type of sin which can be bracketed with such sins as I have mentioned earlier. So the Ahmadi edict is the softest and the mildest in this regard. Ahmadi ladies are not permitted, and this is an institutional and administrative decision. But because the decision is made by Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, who was appointed directly by Allah Himself, so no Khalifa can change this edict. No Khalifa can change this verdict. So if somebody violates this rule, then he is turned out of not Ahmadiyyat but out of the Ahmadiyya administrative attached to Khilafat. This is the measure we take. Otherwise, such ladies are considered to be, strictly from Islamic point of view, legally married, but no longer a part of Ahmadiyya administration. So they shift for themselves, and they have chosen a course of separation from the mainstream. So let them enjoy that way. But they will not be permitted to destroy the life pattern of other ladies, and so that if they are accepted like that, then they would be encouraged to do the same things.
The next question is that according to the Quran, vanity is forbidden. Is it bad if done in jest?
Well, it depends on how far the jest is carried. Vanity is forbidden so that it may not cause injury to others, self-respect, to others' dignity and sentiment and so on. That is the reason why. That is one reason. And the other is that it injures the person who is involved in vanity himself, because it destroys his moral stature. If it does not destroy it, at least it injures, and it interferes with his spiritual development. So it has two ends. As far as the latter end is concerned, if some person is doing it in jest, of course within him it will be all right. I mean, he would not receive the bad influence of real vanity as far as his own soul is concerned. But as far as others are concerned, if they know it is jest, then it is no jest. It fails to achieve the purpose. And if they do not know it is jest, then they would naturally be hurt. So how far the jest is carried and how soon they are told and relieved of the pressure, it all depends on this, the answer to this question, I mean.
So the fifth question is, how do you work?
You see how quick the question, how quickly the questions are disposed of. Very correct and to the point questions. See, this is how the questions are framed. I am asking you, telling you, Mr. Rashid. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. How do you work with a devout Christian who shuns Muslims?
Well, the same weapons as are employed elsewhere in the world. Love and understanding and sacrifice and stooping low for the sake of Allah, not caring for your dignity sometimes, behaving humbly and perseverantly without losing hope, without losing courage, without crying out. If you really mean to convert somebody, that's what I mean. And with prayers. If you seek help from Allah constantly with prayer, then you'd see things happening which are completely outside your power and scope. And those things happen in a manner as you know positively then that it is Allah's agency at work. It is not happening automatically or by chance. So the person who prays in a difficult situation, he sees the signs and he may not be able to establish that case before others who study it from an objective, different point of view. But he feels it subjectively, so he knows it. And the signs are so positive that he can't deny it anymore. So it has a double benefit. Number one, prayer helps him achieve the objective. And number two, prayer helps him enhance his own spiritual status and the quality of his faith. So of all the possible ways and means which I have mentioned, this stands supreme. This is over and above every other thing. You should begin your preaching with prayer. You should constantly pray along the preaching, and you always end up with prayers. Then you will see the quality of your preaching would improve immensely. And the sixth one, please.
The last question is, how do you define an evildoer from a blatantly evil and occasionally blasphemous?
Occasionally blasphemous. You know, evildoer is a larger term which covers also the person who commits blasphemy. That is also an evil. But perhaps what she has in mind is that who commits evil acts, personal evil acts, and the one who indulges in blasphemy against God or the holy people. If that is what she means, then obviously the answer is that the one who commits blasphemy is far more answerable and stands in danger of destruction, spiritual destruction, than the one who is compelled to do some personal acts of sins, but he is humble at the same time and does not indulge in blasphemy. Yes, please? What was it?
Yeah, this is Kim, the girl who's asking the question. The man asked the wrong question.
You see, this is why I wanted the questions to be sent to Saki Sahib. Had you sent the questions to Saki Sahib, he wouldn't do that. Imam Sahib, why you have asked the wrong question?
It was quite difficult to read. I might
Now, have you heard the answer?